really appreciate everyone's being here tonight so we can discuss issues that are of relevance to homeowners associations. This is our first workshop that I've done, so it'll be a good learning experience. We appreciate your questions and your input so we can learn from this experience and just exchange information. So keep it fairly informal. The only thing, if you have a question, if you could make your way up to the microphone so we can capture that on the recording. I'll go ahead and do the introductions for the speakers. My name is Adam Rickard. I'm the MS4 assistant for Monroe County Stormwater Program Highway Department. So I'll kind of go over what I do a little bit later on, but
I'll come up to the microphone.
yeah.
So I guess I'm getting us started. My name is Erica Penna. I am the stormwater inspector with our county stormwater program. I predominantly deal with construction sites and their stormwater protections, but then I also deal with post-construction permanent stormwater features, which I'll get into and why you all are here, part of why you all are here. There's my contact information. If you have any questions or concerns about a construction site in your area you're passing by or about your stormwater features in your neighborhood, please don't hesitate to reach out to myself or Adam. I also have business cards on the table out front too. So first things first, what is a drainage easement? Drainage is the removal of excess surface water or groundwater by means of ditches, subsurface drains, some kind of piping system above ground or below ground. And an easement is the right to use the land owned by another for some designated purpose. We all know about utility easements, but then there's also drainage easements, which often get forgotten. During a subdivision design process, site drainage is carefully considered and incorporated into the design of each lot. Drainage easements can encompass and do encompass the entire stormwater drainage system that is outside the public right-of-way. They're designed so that they are directly accessed from that right-of-way for maintenance purposes, so we're not tearing up yards. We have a direct connection to them. Most often, you'll see them depicted within a common area, such as this large blue area, or along property lines, so kind of split between two properties as that kind of longer area on the left there. So what typically gets included within a drainage easement? As I said, stormwater conveyances can be through pipes, swales, held in detention ponds or basins, or it can be an existing flow path such as a creek or a stream. Any pipes that are outside of the right-of-way that bring stormwater from the road to a detention pond, those are going to be included in a drainage easement. Again, they're often between lots or across several lots, and they should be kept free of obstructions. So typically, the ones that are kind of in the rear of a yard where you see them, those are going to be swales along the rear yards. So there might be some slope to someone's yard. They're not going to be perfectly flat. So we recently updated our stormwater management ordinance, Monroe County Code, Chapter 761, and within that are some drainage easement requirements. It's a lot of words, so I highlighted the important parts. They shall be kept free of obstructions. We don't want to impede that flow of water. We want it to go where it's designed to go, otherwise you can end up with some issues backing up water on your property or your neighbor's property. And then also highlighted, they should be maintained according to their original design and intended function. So intended function is to convey stormwater. We want them to maintain that design. They're designed for a certain capacity. We want them to be able to move that water away from homes where it's supposed to go. A couple other requirements. They should be maintained by the people that own or lease the property through which they pass. And obstacles that would pollute, contaminate, or significantly retard the flow of water should not be placed within a drainage easement. So sheds, play sets, raised beds, gardening. Avoid putting those in a drainage easement. So I've mentioned detention basins. Where are they? If you have an HOA, you're part of a subdivision, you probably have noticed one on your property. Our Monroe County Stormwater Program has an MS4 permit. MS4 meaning Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System. So our stormwater is separate from our sanitary system. And under this permit, we are required to implement 6 minimum control measures. Post-construction is one of them. And under that, we are required to inventory all of our stormwater post-construction measures. So in 2021, I started an inventory of all of the basins, detention basins, retention basins, so your ponds that hold water, rain gardens, underground detention. The new public library location on the southwest side has some underground detention under that surface parking. It's really cool to see it go in, and you wouldn't even know it's there now. So I've documented that, and then some vegetated swales as well. So this is where they are in the county. You can see that they are kind of concentrated on the west side, south side, some extending up I-69. So I have not done the inventory in Bloomington. That's going to be their own separate inventory. You can ask them about that later. Okay, what is a detention pond? What is a detention basin? We'll kind of use those words interchangeably. Depending on the engineer or the designer that's put the plans together, they might use a basin or pond. As I said, these are typically found in our common areas, and they are meant to restrict the flow of stormwater at a prescribed rate. We want to know that that water is being discharged at a certain rate to limit impacts downstream or outside of the subdivision. So detention basins only temporarily hold water. A retention basin, what you think of as a pond, has a base level water level, and so there's built-in capacity above that base water level for rain events. But typically what you're gonna see is a detention. Detains the water and releases it. That water should be held for 24 to 48 hours, maybe 72 hours if we've had a lot of rain and that ground is saturated. But typically you're not gonna see it a few days after a rain event. The design capacity is related to the subdivision size and other important features, such as if they're in a critical watershed, we want to make sure that the drainage doesn't impact the critical waterway. So common areas, like I said, some older subdivisions may have these spread across multiple lots, across multiple parcels, in the backyard area. So they're not always on their own common area, but that would be depicted as a drainage easement for those lots. So now the typical components, what we're gonna see, this is a little bit of a complicated image, I'm sorry, but let's see if I can sneak in here. This is your control structure. You've got an embankment, and then your embankment is gonna have an emergency overflow. So if the water level reaches a certain height or depth, it's going to go over at a designated point, which will let that water overflow to a designated channel. You've got an underdrain system, so the water is going to percolate down, infiltrate, and then outflow, which is why you don't have that standing water. You've also got some inflow pipes that are going to be your drainage from the street. Or yard inlets, collects it and brings it into your basin. So more language from our stormwater management ordinance. So we go out and do long-term post-construction inspections. The state requires us to be on a rolling 5-year inspection schedule. So you'll see us out there kind of every 5 years just to make sure that they're still functioning how they were supposed to. Any major deficiencies that might be found during our inspections or your own inspections as you are inspecting your infrastructure, you are required to take necessary measures to correct those deficiencies. And again, maintained in good condition. So those were already kind of the requirements at the state level and then at the county level to maintain those detention basins, but it's kind of been brought again to the forefront and is more explicitly called out within our ordinance. You do have O&M manuals. Many of them have been recorded. Many of them have not. I don't know exactly when that practice started. Do you have an idea? So hopefully we can help track some of those O&M operations and maintenance manuals down for you all. The recorder's office may have them. The original design firm, engineering firm that designed your subdivision, they may retain some of their older records, so they might have something. Can't always guarantee it. But we'll work with each HOA as needed to work on maintenance requirements and find that O&M manual so you have a sense of what it was designed to look like. Some of that typical maintenance is just mowing. You mow the embankment, keep trees from growing on it. The trees can weaken it and cause points for water to erode and leave where you don't want it to. Mow and trim within the main pond area. You're going to have bioswale plantings in there, hopefully, so you really only need to mow in there once a year. That's great. If there's trees that were planted or maybe have grown in your basin, prune them so you don't have dead branches and things that are going to cause blockages at that outlet control structure, that big concrete structure. And then reseed any bare areas that may arise. So most typically, it's just mowing and trash or debris removal, leaves and branches that might accumulate. So I won't get into a long list of recommended plantings, but we do highly recommend going native. Those are going to be deep-rooted to help with infiltration. They're going to also help with erosion, and you won't need insecticides quite as much because you're going to have the native insects and then the native birds, things that will eat those insects. You also won't require as much fertilizer because they're suited to this area. And then another perk, birds, butterflies will come along. Perennials are great, native shrubs, annuals, also all great. And again, those native plants. They just do better with our weather patterns and have a better chance of surviving. I can provide more plant recommendations at a later date, but I didn't want to overwhelm with that kind of information right now. And that's all I have. Do anyone have questions for me on basins, drainage easements, infrastructure? Yeah.
You said the area should be mowed once a year in the spring. How short should it be cut?
So just the area down inside the basin. I think you want to leave some there, but I wouldn't go golf course low. Yeah.
What are you looking for on your inspection?
So my inspections, I'm doing a once around of the whole thing. So I'm looking at where's water coming in? Is there erosion at that inflow pipe? I'm looking at the outlet control structure itself. Is there a buildup of sediment or debris that might be blocking it or covering the top of it? Because that can cause backups and issues with releasing water when it's supposed to. I'm looking along the embankment to look for erosion, trees growing that might cause issues. Are there animals burrowing into the embankments? looking for if there are native species or is there an overabundance of non-native species? How accessible is it to get to maintain? And what does that outflow, eventual discharge from the pond look like? Is there erosion at the outflow? Is the pipe in good condition? Sometimes the pipes are old and cracked or they've become warped. Sometimes trees, if they discharge into an established channel, a tree has fallen on it and now it's creating a dam within that channel. So looking to make sure that everything is functioning, that there's no serious threats or hazards, just kind of establishing a baseline for where things are at this point.
And your inspections every 5 years?
Mm-hmm.
Is it possible for you to create a checklist for homeowners associations?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so O&M manuals will have a checklist in them. So if you have that O&M manual, you'll have a checklist, but I can certainly provide one as well.
We can. Down and dirty, simplified.
Mm-hmm.
At one time I heard mowing and trash, that's easy to observe.
Yeah.
But you listed many other considerations.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it would be helpful to have a simplified version of an O&M manual that is.
Yeah,
similar.
absolutely. Yeah, definitely.
So what happens if you find an issue with infrastructure?
If we find an issue with the infrastructure, we are reaching out to an HOA. The county does not have a documented list of all HOAs and who to contact, so it's kind of like trying to track things down. So the first thing that we do is, look to see if there is if an HOA exists. Look it up on various state website or reaching out to, there's some management companies, reach out and see if this is part of who they manage. And then we contact them and let them know that, hey, we did our inspection. There are some significant deficiencies here. We want to work with you to repair them and get it into a better working condition. And so the repairs aren't going to, it's not like a week turnaround where we expect those repairs to be done immediately. We're going to work with you, and I think that'll lead into what our next speakers are going to talk about is planning for those expenses and how to deal with them when they come.
So you're putting the expenses on HOA?
Yes, that's how they are designed. That's how they are, as part of what they should be maintaining.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to make that clear for people.
Yes.
And the county does collect on our property taxes for stormwater. They don't call
Yes.
it stormwater anymore, they just call it special assessment, but there's a $75 fee on every
Yeah, the
every
stormwater
property
fee.
tax for that.
Yeah,
So
and
why
that's
doesn't
separate.
that cover it?
We could raise our stormwater fee to be able to cover that, but the fee itself we do not have the capacity to do that, to maintain the basins at this point.
What's the difference between a rain garden and a detention pond?
Rain gardens are typically smaller. They're going to service a smaller impervious surface area.
Okay, so it's just smaller.
Smaller and less deep, and they're not typically going to have an outlet control structure. They may have a small, just kind of a pipe with a cover, but they're not going to have the larger concrete type.
Okay, because I think we only have one that has the big concrete thing.
All right, I don't want to take up too much of the time because I know we've got some other speakers, so I'll take maybe one more question.
What's the enforcement mechanism?
Right now, we're not imposing fines. We want to work with HOAs. We know that this is new, and we know that it's going to be a lot for people to work towards. So the enforcement is working with you. We want to see a plan established, kind of a timeline. And like I said, it's not a quick turnaround. So we want to see it's not in our budget for this year. We're going to start working towards how we can budget it or start funding it. So it's kind of going to depend on the site, the problems, how active the HOA is, if there is an HOA. These are things that we are actively thinking about and working forward towards. I think Kelsey might have.
You have the ability for full enforcement of stormwater management ordinance for maintenance of all of these measures. Sorry?
What if there isn't an HOA?
That's a great question. we're figuring it out case by case, working with the homeowners. We have no way to enforce the creation of the HOA. That's not within the purview of our program. So we are limited. There's no HOA. And I've complained to the state and other folks higher up, and we're working on it.
I know you said one more, but it's more just a suggestion. If we don't have a list of all the HOAs, maybe it's a good way to start and start building a list.
Yes, that is actually part of our plan, is to take your contact information and start building our list so that we have someone to reach out to. And so we can start building that list and provide more information.
Kona has a more expensive list, maybe.
Maybe, I think Adam is reaching out and trying to build that list through different puzzle pieces. So if anyone knows of other HOAs that aren't here and someone to contact with them, please share that with us, share our information with them as well.
Is there an equivalent of you for the city of Bloomington? The HOA I'm with is within the city limits.
Yes,
so-
yeah, there is a stormwater program within the city. Mhm.
But is there a you? Are they doing the same things in the city as you're doing in the county?
Yeah, they are also going out and inspecting and keeping an inventory as well, yes. They do. They also have a stormwater inspector.
Thanks.
So you answered that question. Do you work with the city?
We do work together. Our jurisdiction is different. So we, keep our hands in our own pots. But we do work together quite a bit. Liz Carter is here. She's the MS4 coordinator with the city. And Christy Lindberg is their stormwater education specialist.
To support that.
Yes, yeah, see, we work together. So, all right, I will pass it on to the next person. I appreciate your questions, and I'll be here till the end if you have some other questions that you think of.
And we should have time at the end for questions, and if you have additional questions, we'll follow up beyond this tonight. So give me just a second to move to the next presentation. Okay, this is a typical scene within a HOA or just a residential subdivision. And this, I realized after I put this, or I selected this shot that, well, let me ask you, what's not happening in this picture?
Without leaf pickup.
Okay. Yep, the way that they're putting it on the curb is not controlled. But yeah, there's a lot happening here with the lawn clippings going straight into the storm drain. We actually, for the highway department, we call them inlets. So if you see inlet on this presentation, it's the same thing. But we have, this might be their son is putting on or applying fertilizer or pesticide to the grass. We have two situations where the grass is being watered with the sprinkler and on the side of the driveway. But this is like the worst case disaster, but there's still something that's not happening in the picture. Okay, it talks about 70% of pollutants enter streams via stormwater. So it's not raining in this picture, which is, I guess this accounts for 30% of the pollutants that go into streams, is what I'm saying. So, but obviously, this represents a situation where there's not really any care taken to make sure that we don't have pollutants entering the storm drains. In this picture, you see the storm in the drain, or the storm drain, and then in that caption is the outfall, what we call an outfall, and I'll talk about that here in a second. But that's the two main components of stormwater infrastructure I want to talk about today. Erica talked about best management practices that are in neighborhoods. This might be a older neighborhood that doesn't have a BMP, that just has storm drains, and they might have an outfall near the subdivision, but so I'm going to just restrict this to that, inlets and outfalls. So does anybody know what the most common pollutant is for stormwater? No, and it's actually by volume, I should say. It's the most common pollutant by volume is the sediment. And that could be just, you have bare soil, it could be from a construction site, or there's this maintenance being done for that property that you have bare soil, so that's not stabilized. So, okay, so we'll move on to the next one. Okay, so this is an example of a storm drain in this residential neighborhood. Most of our storm drains, about 58%, are actually in a residential subdivision, so they account for the majority of what we have to oversee and ensure that that's protected.
Does that fall under you guys maintaining the stormwater outlets themselves, or is that under highway?
You mean for the,
Well, when you said maintain, I understand the stormwater, cleaning, et cetera, but actually the structure itself.
okay, yeah, so the question is, who does the maintenance of the storm drains? Is that, okay.
Particular structures themselves, is that part
Yeah.
of the highway? Or
Yeah,
is that
at the highway department, we have two street sweepers that have routes that go around and clean all the inlets. And then, of course, if you ever see an inlet that's clogged or is in need of repair, we encourage you to contact us so we can address that. So we want to know about that. But yeah, that's what I meant by maintenance. And if the drain is actually physically damaged, we'll put in a case to investigate and then ultimately repair that.
It's important to note that that's within the right-of-way, so along the roadway.
That's why I want to clarify in regards to stormwater homeowners associations and
Yep.
whose responsibility that was.
Right, that it's not in the easement. Is that, okay?
Okay, thank you.
You had a
So
question?
I just want to clarify. So if you got a subdivision, you got an HOA, then they are not responsible for the maintenance of the stormwater structure and cleaning it out and all that. If it gets clogged up, that is something that the highway department takes care of.
Yeah, for the most part, I mean, if there's any mystery about that, like, because there are some storm drains that are marked as being private. So if you have any questions about that, we encourage you to contact us so we can clarify whether it's the highway department or it's responsible for the HOA. But I think the vast majority are going to be maintained by the highway department.
We ask homeowners to do just general maintenance, like clear the leaves off if it's clogged. Just keep an eye on the infrastructure, because we don't inspect all the inlets all the time. We rely on people calling in to let us know something's not working. So if you can just clear them, that's great within your means, but bigger fixes, call us.
Yeah, we wouldn't stop you from clearing out away some grass clippings, and we appreciate all the assistance. Even if it's just a phone call, that's fine too. So this is a outfall. So I kind of skipped a lot of infrastructure, basically a storm drain, and then an outfall. I mean, there's a lot of other infrastructure that happens between the outfall, but the outfall is really important because that's the last point of where the highway department would have any control over what's been introduced into the storm drains. So does anybody have an idea of what is not typically included with stormwater infrastructure? What's not between the storm drain and the outfall? No, you have piping, you might have ditches, you might have culverts. What I meant by this is that for the most part, there's no treatment. It's not like a sanitary sewage plant where the sewage goes through a plant and goes through stages of treatment. For the most part, most of our infrastructure, it just goes into, stormwater goes in the storm drain, goes through the pipes or the ditches and then out to the outfall. There's no treatment. There's no collection of trash. There's no collection of sediment. So that's why it's really important to address it at the storm drain, that if we can stop it before it's introduced, then that's the ideal goal with this. So any questions about outfalls?
Where are the outflows?
They're usually they're always by the stream. You know, they have to be right by the stream so that there's no other piping or conveyance
So it
system.
dumps into a stream?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
And the outfalls then are generally on whoever owns the land where that outfall is to take care of, or is that something that you guys would get involved with if there was a problem?
Okay. Yeah. The question was, is that on the responsibility of the property owner that's next to that outfall? Not necessarily. Usually, if there's something that's been introduced other than stormwater, it's our responsibility to backtrack and see where it was introduced. So it's not necessarily the responsibility of the property owner.
As an example, the one where it's just kind of going down through the woods to the stream. If a tree fell over and then might actually, cause a problem with it, the water, it's still gonna get to the stream, but it's gonna go in a slightly different path, potentially. Is that the homeowner's expected to go down, or the HOA is expected to go down and chop the tree up and move it? Is that something that, you guys would come out and do? It just depends on the size of the tree. Is it, no, it's really the HOA's problem, have a nice day?
No, I mean, we would investigate it and determine, right. And we want to convey that so that it's not a mystery to the HOA that what's happening, but, okay. All right, so this is what impacts, anything that goes into the storm drain, it's largely not treated. There's no collection of trash or sediment. So a lot of the watersheds in Monroe County actually kind of bypass Lake Monroe, but there are, does everybody understand what a watershed is? Okay, it's basically, if you think of a bowl, a cereal bowl, it's the lowest spot on the land, and water travels down gradient, so you can map it out using contours to determine where the water, it's basically where does the water flow. We depend on stormwater will ultimately become drinking water once it's been treated. Lake Monroe is a valuable resource for recreation and for fishing and for drinking water, obviously. So we want to protect that. And I just put this. I went kayaking a few months ago, and in Clear Creek we actually saw a gar. It was really cool to see something like that, and they actually travel along the kayak with you. And we looked it up, and it was like these things have been around for 65 million years. So I was, that's something we have here in Monroe County. All right, so we want to encourage a relationship with HOAs. We want to have opportunities for HOAs to participate in storm drain marking or to cleanup events. That if you have a HOA that's adjacent to a stream and you'd like to organize a stream cleanup, we'll be more than happy to help you do that and to make sure that we remove as much trash as can be removed. So there's other events that we'd like to encourage, like Hoosier River Watch, reporting illicit discharges. That's what I just spoke about with the introduction. It might be somebody had some work done on their concrete patio, and the concrete waste was introduced, or the cement waste was introduced into the storm drain. We want to know about that so we can stop the release and then do enforcement so that it doesn't happen again. And then just reporting drainage issues, we want to encourage residents to do that and to know who to call for that. So, okay, and then this last slide is just we we're very fortunate to live in Monroe County, where we have different organizations that have created Adopt a Stream. That's something that CBU, Bloomington Parks, and Monroe County Parks hosts. So if you have a HOA that maybe not the entire HOA, but at least promote it to your residents so that they are aware of these. And if they want to represent your neighborhood in a Adopt a Stream segment, that's what we want to try to see. So Monroe County Soil and Water, they offer technical assistance for private property owners if you have a drainage issue on your property. So that they offer soil testing. Lake Monroe has shoreline cleanups, and they're about to have some drinking water tours. So we just want to make sure that we promote this so that your residents are aware of it and take advantage of this. So that's pretty much all I had. Any questions?
I wanted to circle back to the question about responsibility of maintaining of the actual sewer grates, I guess, for lack of a better word. We have a weird situation in our HOA where a third of our houses are not accepted into the county highway system. Does that then put the onus on the HOA to repair those if something goes wrong with those cloud hits it, something like that?
Yeah, if it's still maintained by the HOA, then yes, that it would that, and we can provide you with some resources to help you find out the best solution to that. But yeah, ultimately that would be on the HOA.
Another question, maybe circling back more towards the beginning, but so you said every 5 years we'll come around. There's a schedule of some sort, I assuming, and if there's 340, is that accurate?
That's how what we have so far. I believe there's more than that out there. We just the state required us to inventory 250 in our first go around, and we got 340. So
good job, you.
Yeah, we know that there's more out there, and they're being built as the county develops. So
that puts you with inspecting about approximately 3 every 2 weeks, assuming you want to take 2 weeks of vacation. I have to think you would. So, barring any sort of an issue that we perceive, just kind of walking around the neighborhood, they're not like perhaps not building up and staying there for 5 days.
Mm-hmm.
We don't necessarily have to have these inspected unless we visualize. There's not a specific, you've gotta have this inspected every so often beyond your inspection. Is that correct?
The O&M maintenance, the O&M manuals will recommend at least a yearly inspection.
Not required.
No, but I mean that helps you with maintenance and that helps you see and kind of plan ahead. So heavily recommended.
Okay. Unfortunately, we have a limited amount of time, so if you have any additional questions, we'll have to hold them to the end. I'd like to move on to the next presentation by Leah Messmore, and I'll let her introduce herself, and we'll go from there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you want me to move this, or are you okay with using the space bar?
Oh,
Or
it's
you can
just a
use that.
space bar?
Yeah, space bar, or you can use these.
Okay, okay, perfect. Good evening. How are you guys? Thank you for inviting me tonight. I am Leah Messmore. I am with the Community Association Institute, what we call CAI. CAI is an international organization. It is a website that you can go to learn more, which I have up here, but it is for board members, it is for vendors who work for homeowner associations, and it's also for community association managers to join. The Indiana chapter, which is at the top, that is their website up there. We hold seminars for board members, and we also have Expo in the spring that brings together vendors and board members for education purposes and also to get to know vendors for any services that you may need who specialize in homeowner associations. So that's just a little bit about CAI. Also, this is our email to reach us. We have our director that works for our chapter. And again, we do hold seminars for board members, several throughout the year, and they're, I'd say 90% of the time by Zoom. So I know living down here, It's hard to get up to Indianapolis, which is where our office is located, but most of these are through Zoom. And also the national website, caionline.org, has webinars that they've recorded that you can watch as well. If you become a member, it's $125 a year. If it's 2 or more on your board, then it's $340. So it's 2 to 15 board members. It's just one flat rate, but you can always view the webinars, attend chapter events, or attend seminars to have education as a board member. So going on from there. How many of you, I'm assuming most of you are board members, so are all of you aware of the Federal Transparency Act, Federal Corporate Transparency Act?
Explain, please.
Okay. So what I will call the FCTA, I'm going to go to here. Okay. And I'll come back to the other page. So the FCTA was passed by the Senate in January of 2021, is passed by Congress. And the Corporate Transparency Act is to better detect suspicious financial activities such as money laundering and terrorist financing. The law applies to corporations, including nonprofit corporations, except those falling under certain exemptions. So basic terms, and first let me say, I am not a lawyer, so if you have very specific questions, please reach out to an attorney that specializes in homeowner associations. On our website, there are a list of attorneys in the area that specialize in homeowner associations. But going back to this, if you are a board member by December 31st of this year, you have to go on the website, it's down here at the bottom, and fill out the form that basically is saying your name, date of birth, residential address. If you own a condo in Bloomington and a condo in Florida, the residential address would be the one where you are on the board. An identification document, a copy of it would have to be uploaded, which either would be a passport or driver's license or the rest of those listed there. So the government is enforcing this, and even though you haven't heard of it, there are already 2 areas in the United States where that is on hold because they have sued the government, but one is in Alabama. I can't remember the other one, but going back to this one, this here kind of explains there are certain 2 areas where that is on hold, but that does not apply here. So if you are a board member, you have to have this inputted by December 31st. The attorneys that I stated are specialists in homeowner associations, one of them being Eads, Murray, and Pugh, Thrasher, Bushman, and Volkel out of Indianapolis. They can help you with that process. If you want to reach out to some attorneys to help with the process of the board doing this, or some boards are just doing it on their own. Now, if you do not do it, there will be a daily fine, and there could also be imprisonment time of up to 2 years if you do not input this information. So it is very disheartening for me as a property manager because it's very difficult to find board members to be on the board, to volunteer to be on the board, because if everything else that comes with being a board member and then you throw this into it, it is disheartening because we feel that there will be a lot of board members that will drop off because of this. I was at a seminar in June, and not Mike Pence, but his brother, sorry about that, was at the seminar, spoke about this, and stated they're trying to get this delayed. But as of today, it has not been delayed. I even checked with a couple of attorneys, same thing. It has not been delayed, so please keep this in mind. Check with an attorney about this if you have more questions. So Another part, and I'll just leave this information up there again, just so you can write it down if you want to. Another part of my speaking today is about engagement with your homeowners, engagement as board members. I appreciate that if you are a board member, that you have volunteered to be on the board, that you have volunteered, but that does not mean that you should be bullied as a board member. And sometimes you get on the board and you are bullied by other homeowners because they wanted that certain fence and you're not going to allow them to have it. But that doesn't mean, that's not what you're on the board to do, is just to cave to other homeowners when something is not done to their liking. You have volunteered to you have resigned as a director to not put up with the annex of other homeowners. So we appreciate the time and commitment you have given to your homeowners association, and I know it's difficult for others to see that sometime. Remember what the board's fiduciary duties are, and you will act in good faith for your homeowners association. You will act with reasonable care and in the best interest of the association, not putting the desires of other homeowners first, but what is best for your association. That is your fiduciary duty. One of the things that I want to also point out as board members, try not to give out your personal email. If there is a lawsuit, please remember that they will use that personal email and get records in that personal email. If you're using your work email, you should stop doing that immediately. We strongly recommend you create an email for you as a board member. So let's say your association name is Spinnaker Cove. You would, Spinnaker Cove Homeowners Association, use schoa@gmail.com or schoapresident@gmail.com. That way, when you leave as a board president, the new president can take over and also have the past records too. So don't be using your personal emails, or especially your work emails, because that can get you in big trouble if there is a lawsuit. Avoid using, or I've already told you that, if association has a management company, of course, use that management company as the contact for owners. You know, this is who we've hired. They are the person that is getting paid. You're a volunteer. So use that management company to take the complaints and take the architectural request, your financials, creating those and taking care of collections. So determine your accessibility, but limit it. Okay. Also, be careful of personal interactions with homeowners, as I keep stressing because I just see it so much. Always assume you're being recorded when you're talking to a homeowner about a grievance or even architectural request. If you're meeting one-on-one with them, always assume you're being recorded. And if you make a decision, you don't have to make it right there in front of that homeowner. Put it in writing, say we'll email you and let you know, and then regroup and put it in writing. So everything is in writing. They're not coming back and saying, if there is a lawsuit, that, well, they told me when we met this and this and this. Always just say, we're going to put it in writing. We'll send it to you tomorrow. Okay, and then also if you're meeting with homeowners one-on-one for a grievance or for architectural, make sure that, try to make it that one person in the group of the board is talking and, you know, making the meeting go smoothly as possible. That way we're not all talking at once or talking over each other. Just try to make it that one, or even just the property manager, is running the meeting and talking to that person, and then stating at the end, we'll get back to you at tomorrow about our decision. Those are little things about accessibility and homeowner engagement. Always communication is key. Try to keep, have your emails up to date with your homeowners, and also do email blast or communication signs at the front when you're having your annual meeting. I don't know if you have a tough time getting people to attend your annual meetings, but email blasts and signs at the front letting them know. Don't forget when you have board meetings that by law, they have to be open for other homeowners to attend. So please keep that in mind, that they do have the right to attend. They do have the right to reach to know who is on the board. And they also have to have a way to contact you. That's per the state law. If we say, how can I contact them? I usually come back and say, let me check with that board member and I'll let you know what email they want you to have. Doesn't mean you have to give them an email, because they can even just write you a letter so they could have your address. Most of the time they already know what your address is anyway, but I wouldn't say most of the time. Sometimes board members just give out their address and say they can send me a letter and not take a personal email. But again, if you just have the SCHOA president@gmail.com, that's an email to contact you. It's not your personal email. It's not your work email. So those are good tips, just to do not use the personal emails. Any questions? Thank you. Yeah.
I'm going to leave Leah's presentation on the desk out here, so if you, or the table, if you'd like to grab one on your way out.
Yeah, and I can't stress enough, if you are on the board and you have to fill this out by December 31st, please reach out to any attorneys that specialize in homeowners associations, but you do have to get that filled out. As of today, it has not been delayed, and maybe hopefully it will be, because I think it's a little too much to give to the government, but that's just my opinion.
Can I make 2 comments about that?
Yeah.
I'm having to do the beneficial owner thing as a business owner and also as a board member.
Mm-hmm.
So just be aware, the daily fines are big. It's not like $100 a day, it's more than $1,000 a day. They're not screwing around with this, so, unless you know it's been stopped, do it. The other thing that I've been told is that if a board member leaves and a new board member comes in, I believe you have 30 days to go back to the government and refill this in. So if you have, in our particular case, we have elections in October, but people don't start until January. We wouldn't need to put their names in until January, but you have 30 days to get it in once they take effect. And if a board member changes over, so just don't screw with this and make sure that if a board member goes out and a new one comes in, you've got 30 days to get the new board member's information filled out and sent in.
Yeah, that's a very good point. But you do have 30 days if there's a change in board members.
Is there a cost to
No, there is no
fill that
cost.
out?
No.
Okay.
No, it's just going to the
Just to be-
website and putting in that information.
And there are lots of groups that are still trying to get it either delayed or tossed,
Yes.
but, it's an election year, nothing's gonna happen. Or the chances are slim that anything's gonna happen, so
Right.
just be prepared.
CAI, the Community Association Institute, the national office has filed a lawsuit as well, but nothing has changed so far. So that is what part of your dues are, is to go to the Legal Action Committee and always stand up locally, and you're in the state of Indiana and also nationally. Those dues go to legal action and trying to do things that will help homeowner associations. Yeah.
So we have time for one more question, then we have to move on. So we have time at the end for questions.
Yeah.
So this isn't just homeowners associations, it's all nonprofits, is that right?
It's all business.
It's all business.
I will
It's
just-
all corporations.
Businesses, corporations, there's a list of, and they all seem to be mostly financial organizations that don't have to do it. But pretty much everybody else, if you have a business and they're counting an HOA as a business, in this particular, most HOAs are incorporated, so they're a corporation, that's a business, it covers everybody.
I won't answer that, I just know it's for homeowner associations, yes.
I went on last week and did it, and it doesn't take long, 15 minutes.
Okay, so it
I'm
took
worried about
15
some
minutes?
organizations
Yeah.
that have no
Okay.
clue. That's the first I heard of it.
I heard from my accountant.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All All right, thank you, Leah. Next, we have Eric Robertson, and he's going to speak on reserve studies. Yeah, space bar, or if you need to go back. Oh, that would be helpful, wouldn't it?
You said space bar just goes forward?
Yes, great.
Well, first of all, thank you guys for inviting us to this. Hopefully I can kind of tie some of this all in, but first of all, does everybody know what a reserve study is? Okay. But what it is that fee that you pay, your owners pay, the maintenance fee. Typically what we see is an operating account and a reserve account. Not always, but the reserve is capital replacements. I usually talk about roofing in a condominium situation, things that are long-term, don't necessarily happen every day, okay? So I'm gonna go through this, just kind of what a reserve study is real quick. There's two parts to it, the physical side of it and then the financial side of it. So what the first thing, and I'm gonna kind of tie this into the legal thing. Everybody's probably gonna be calling their attorney now, right? But I highly recommend that you get an HOA attorney to scrub through your covenants and get a checklist as to what your responsibilities are. I don't know how many times I do these where people are saying, I'm not sure if we're responsible for that. I'm not an attorney. I don't know if you've all read a covenants, but typically my joke, and no offense if there's any first-year law students here, but it's either a first-year law student wrote it or a developer that doesn't really want you to know what you own, okay? So it's first thing I say you do is go get a list of exactly what your responsibilities are. Make sure your owners know that. It will save you so many headaches. That being said, that is what we go by as far as a reserve study is concerned. So when I go out to do a reserve study, we take an inventory of the assets, basically, that you're responsible for. Part of what we're talking here tonight, Erica and Adam, these are things that are traditionally not necessarily seen in a reserve study or even in your budget. There's a school of thought out there that says a reserve study item is something that has an identifiable useful life, okay? Something that we can quantify. These items, ponds, landscaping, not really a way to give you an identifiable useful life. However, they are very important to you in your bottom line. So we try to come up with a way to reserve for these things. Ponds, I recommend having a dredger. There's not many dredgers in Indiana, but I recommend having an actual study come out where they take baseline measurements. So what we normally do when we do this is I'll put a line item in your reserve study that may say storm water. Sometimes you'll see utility contingency, pond dredging, erosion control, these things. And if we don't have a good number, we got to put a place marker in there. Because what happens if it comes down to it where you have, some mean person like Erica comes out and makes you repair something, right? No, I know, but these are things that your HOA typically, and your owners don't realize is a possibility to occur. So a lot of times what I'll do is put a place marker in, say, if you've got 5 ponds, we're going to put $25,000 a pond in until we know what your actual responsibility is. Because these kind of things can come up and bite you and become a special assessment real quick, okay? So that is, in a nutshell, what a reserve study. I'm sorry, I'm not really moving my, I think I kind of get it. But yeah, the first thing we do is we come out, we take an inventory of the items. There's different types of communities. If you're a single family community, a lot of times you might have a pool, some ponds, that sort of thing. So that's what we include. If you're a condominium association, what we're going to be talking about, your roofing, your siding. And again, this is why I think it's real important to have an attorney give you this checklist. I don't know if anybody has a checklist for your owners. As soon as your owner moves in, give them this checklist. This is what we are responsible for. This is where your fee goes. And then part of what we do, once we get this all put together, we ask you how much money you got in your reserve account. How much are you contributing to it from your budget? And if you're not, then this is where I become the mean guy. So, you know, you need more money, and here's the recommendation. And we do a 30-year study, which is a long way out, but this, I think Leah mentioned it, fiduciary responsibility of the board. This is what it's all about. Maintaining the property. The other misnomer about a reserve fund is this is not a savings account. It's not a rainy day fund. It's designed to repair depreciation on your assets. So again, physical, the financial, main thing it does, protects your investment. That's what this is all about. The ideal way, usually, and Leah can attest to this because we've done a lot of studies together, a lot of times communities don't come to me until they're 30, 40 years old, and next year they have to replace $1 million worth of roofing, and they got $25,000 in their reserve account. And they come to me, and I'm like, you don't have enough money. I mean, this is what it is. It's how we all live. It's like, you know, I just said it's not a savings account, but it's kind of the same thing. The more you've got in your reserve fund, the more you write the narrative to what happens, okay? Exactly. The more you can get, and I say this, get from your homeowners, and I don't mean it to sound that way. This is not a profit situation. And when I do these reserve studies, and I see one face that I know we're working with, but one of my jokes is I tell people at the end of this, I want you to take me out to dinner, but not a good one, okay? So what I mean by that is we're trying to get enough money to take care of these responsibilities, but not overdo it for your owners. And the best way to do this, in my opinion, is to do it in an even level, you know, so the people are using up the same amount of assets as they're moving in and out of the community, okay? There is actually a tax risk to this. People that, we don't see it happen. My former partner, Doug, who was a CPA, would tell you that if you have a large chunk of money sitting there, it's a taxable item. Okay, a reserve study protects you from that. This is why we have that money sitting in that account. It's for these things. Okay, it's a pretty simple concept, but it's just something to have. Now, one other thing, talking about the attorneys, in Indiana, there is no requirement to do a reserve study. There are a few states that have that requirement. Florida's one of them. You've probably all read articles about that. And also the way they reserve is different. Here we call it cash flow method or pooling. You got a bucket of money for your reserves. So it gives some flexibility to the boards. So again, the stronger your reserve fund is, the better you react. So if you got a bunch of money sitting there and Erica comes in, I'm picking on you, sorry, comes in and says, hey, you've got all this work you got to do in your drainage. You know, most people don't have money sitting there for that. So it's important to have that built up for that purpose. So in a nutshell, that's what this is. Does anybody have any questions? Yeah.
So am I correct in you believe that you have or you do have a system, say for I got a drainage system, getting ready to put in a subdivision, and I bring this to you, you have some sort of a system you put together that says they need to be putting back X amount of dollars for X amount of years. Because, I mean, I look at it from, if I put this thing in, okay, and now they're responsible for it, okay, gets to the HOA, which is like after 5 years now. So now they have it. And how in the world would we come up with a number that says that we can handle something? Because
when it happens,
she could come out and look at it, and maybe it was defective pipe, maybe it was something happened with the geology around, and somehow the system isn't draining correctly, isn't doing what it's supposed to, and all of a sudden this could be a $20,000 bill, $50,000 bill,
$70,000
bill. I mean,
yep.
you know, so how do you prepare for such an unknown?
It is a great question, and the answer is your best. Do your best, because here's what happens. There's certain things we can quantify. Roofing is a good example. We got a pretty good idea. A dimensional shingle is going to last you 25 years, 20 years. somewhere in there. Okay, and we know roughly how much that's gonna cost you. Something like ponds, landscaping, these issues, we don't know. We really don't know. And that's why a lot of reserve folks won't put these in their study. I'm different. We're in Indiana. I don't have these laws that I have to follow right now. I mean, that could change, okay? So when I come in to do a study, my intent is to help you guys prepare for, you know, the unknown. So your question, I can't answer it. We don't know. So the more, you know, it's kind of how we live. There's things, I'm going to tell you another reserve joke because this is a pretty dry subject. Yeah, I've got probably 20, right? Yeah, she's heard them all. I used to live in Nashville, Indiana, and one of my little jokes was, we got snakes under rocks. We don't know what rocks they're under or what kind of snakes they are, okay? And that's what reserves are. So again, you know, we don't know, but if you have 25,000 sitting in your reserve fund for these things, as opposed to zero, you're 25,000 ahead. You know, so it's a great question. We don't always know.
I do want to say that a typical lifespan of one of these detention basins, it's going to vary based on how well it's maintained, but they can last without needing heavy maintenance for a good 20, 25, maybe 30 years if they've been regularly mowed, you know, kind of cleared out as debris built up. So the lifespan can be several decades, but many of these are approaching that mark because they were installed in the late 90s or early 2000s. So some of them are approaching that point where they might start to need some significant repairs, and these are the ones that we are going to heavily work with on a timeline to get things repaired. So just keep that in mind, that similar to a roof, these are going to last 20 to 30 years.
Yeah.
I will tell you, as a realtor, when I go into a condominium association and make an offer, I want to see that reserve fund study, and I want to see what's in the reserves. And it does affect your homeowners, because I have renegotiated deals because there's 100 condos there. I'm like, hey, we got $300,000 in the reserve.
Yeah.
Your roofs are 19 years old. That's only $3,000 a roof.
$4 million worth of roofing
Right,
that's
and I
coming up
know
5
there's
years.
gonna be a special assessment in the next few years for that home buyer. So you do need to maintain those reserve accounts. And
That's absolutely correct. Real quick, just before, another thing on that is we recommend doing these reserve studies. I said it was a 30-year study. That's kind of how far we look out, which is a long way out. And it's an attempt to show you some long-lived items that are out in that future that could happen. But it's recommended to update these things every 3 to 5 years. So that might help with what you're talking about is, hey, we start seeding this for this possibility. Nothing's happened yet. Okay, we seeded a little further. Nothing's happened yet. We get 10, 15 years down the road, maybe we calm that down a little bit because we're just not having a history with it. Okay, and I guarantee you, if you have some of that money sitting there, you're going to find a use for it. Okay, you know, we use a thing called percent funded in our reports. It's kind of a ratio of all these things. What's accruing on an annual basis. Again, the higher we get toward that 100% is kind of what we're trying to do. If you're a condo community as opposed to a single family where you got a playground, maybe a couple ponds, whatever, you know, I say you get on the lower side of that. You're probably safe. In a condo situation, you got to be able to go home and live in your condo. So the higher money, and that's the reason I think you guys are looking at that, right? Yeah, absolutely.
I've never seen one overfunded.
No, no. Have we? And I've never seen an HOA that really wants my recommendation, to be honest with you. So, yeah.
I believe I heard, I think when Erica was speaking, that detention, retention, rain guards, whatever, are supposed to be maintained to their original design. What's the county's perspective on that example? And you said, you have one that's 20 or 30 years old and needs to be redone. Are there new requirements that are invented, or are we going back to the original design?
So if the original designs are available, some of these that have been installed, especially on the map you saw where they are located, are within that fringe around the city of Bloomington, which was reviewed and approved by City of Bloomington Planning. So we don't always have access to some of those plans. So we're going to try our best to find those plans, find the design standards at the time that they were built, and work with you to meet those standards. If we find that it's deficient and you're going in and doing the work and it's not going to change the cost, we might help you bring it up to today's standard. But oftentimes, if you're going in and having to replace pipes or do regrading, you're going to have to get in and do that anyway, so it's not going to change the cost of what you're doing to bring it up to a higher standard. So we have a lot of plans in our records. The county planning department has a lot of plans in their records. We've reached out to the City of Bloomington Planning on some old records in the past. They have to do some digging, but eventually they find it. We've also reached out to some of the local engineers who've designed these, and they do have some of those old records as well. So if we can find them, we'll work with it to get back to that original standard. Otherwise, we'll work with a local engineer to
So the
figure
intent
something
is to go back to the original standard.
Mhm.
The intent is not to force upgrades.
You here?
Monroe County, yes.
Okay. Well, it was likely because it would, needing to accommodate something new. I'm not familiar with that, so I can't speak to it. But the intention is to bring it back to its original design.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Sure.
Do you have contractors that you work with that can do this type, depending on what you come up with? Do you have, because that's one issue where, as a reserve person, I don't recommend contractors because that can be a conflict.
Yeah.
Okay, and I get that question all the time. Who's a good pond dredger?
Mm-hmm.
There's not many of them, so I hesitate to. I'll give that kind of information out just because there's not much, but so you have resources for.
We can provide a
folks.
list of contractors in the area, but you're also welcome to source your own. There's a lot of graders, people who perform grading activities, and excavators in Monroe County and surrounding county. So certainly we can provide a list of those that we have worked with in the past or who have that we are familiar with, but again, we don't recommend for a conflict of interest. It's up to you to decide.
So where are you in the process in terms of, okay, we have an HOA, how do we know if you've inspected us?
Mhm.
Where's the report, so we know where we are?
So we haven't sent those out yet because we were waiting for our ordinance to update. The requirement from the state came in, and part of that was to update our ordinance. So we were waiting for our ordinance to be updated, and we are formulating those reports now, and those will be going out. Of the 340 that I have inspected, I think there's only 20, maybe 25 that are in pretty poor shape, and so I'm going to be reaching out to those ones first.
But the ones that aren't in poor shape, will we, if those are ours, would we still get the report so we would be able to do some preventive maintenance?
Yes, so the intention is to send the report out to everyone. Part of it is also making sure I have somewhere to send it to. So that's why I'm kind of focusing on the ones that are in the worst shape first, get those sent out, kind of have to do some digging to figure out where they're going, who to mail it to, and then move up from there and get the rest of those sent out too. So
do you have a timeline? Like, what's your goal to get them?
The hope for the ones in the worst shape by the end of this year, and then the other ones that are in less worse shape, depending on how finding addresses and people to send it to goes with that first batch. Hopefully early into next year, maybe by the end of this year if it was a somewhat easy process. So we've pulled. So part of what I did when I did the inventory was pulling the parcel information, but that's not always. Doesn't always have the most up-to-date owner information. When we've done that in the past, it gets returned to us. So we're going to have to kind of pull some of that information and then do a verification of it.
So is it something we could proactively contact?
Yes.
To see if you've done our
Yes, yes.
Okay. So
Definitely.
We can shoot you an email.
But maybe not tomorrow.
Maybe not tomorrow.
No, but
Yes.
we could email you and you could get us.
Absolutely.
And let us know if you've
Yes, you
Inspector.
can reach out, and then I'd also be happy to send it to you and then meet you on site to discuss it at a later date.
And you would have contact information for those places.
I'll give you a recommendation. Contact the title companies,
Uh-huh.
have a list of the HOA managers.
Okay, yeah, I think
then
Adam's been doing that too,
list.
so that's gonna be, yeah, awesome. We will work with that. I think we are at time, so I hate to cut the conversation short. It's been great. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you to Leah, to Eric, for coming down and speaking today. We hope to have more of these in the future. We want to improve the process so that, you know, one, we have enough space and time to accommodate all the questions. So we'll send out a survey. We encourage you to send that back. If you haven't already signed the sign-in sheet, that's really helpful to us. Like Erica mentioned, we just currently don't have good contact lists for HOAs. And it would be, I think, beneficial to all of us if we kept that current and made that available so we can reduce the mystery with everything. But that, I'm going to go ahead and call it a wrap for this workshop. But thank you again for your attendance.